Welcome everybody to my lecture. First of all, I want to do my namaskar to my gurus, without whom I would be just another Dutch girl. And my sincere thanks to Dr. Sunil Parab for this invitation. I've been following the lectures this past season on Mythology Classroom, and they were fantastic. A very good collection of very various subjects. And so I'm very honored that my lecture will be the concluding one for this season. And I hope for everybody it will be the icing on the cake. I also want to thank the people, some of the people who've helped me one way or another, especially Padma Priya Bhaskaran and Sri Kumar Menon, Veludaran, who I know is here, Katie Brobeck and Ravichandran, and especially also Professor Beat Shilaja from the Nehru Planetarium in Bangalore, who encouraged me to undertake this work, and whose publications on eclipse inscriptions in Karnataka have been extremely helpful. So let's begin. Oh dear. Right. Nagas, serpents with discs, refers to eclipse. This is from the oral tradition. I was taught this long ago by Raja Dikshitar, one of my teachers and very best friend. We will talk a bit more about him, but now first just go into this. So here we have, okay. It's a little bit working, a little bit different from when I practiced. We have here two serpents. One is approaching what is obviously a lunar sickle. So the other one is approaching what can be understood to be the sun. And the lunar disk is flanked by two peacocks, and the solar disk is flanked by two parrots. And in the center, in between them, there is this lotus medallion. We will all come back to this. So first I want to tell you a little bit about we'll go into what is eclipse. Here are images of a solar and a lunar eclipse, but you will never see this together in the sky. That is how it works. Actually, eclipses, so on the left, we have the solar eclipse, which happens when the moon covers the sun, because the moon is in between the sun and the planet and Earth, our planet, and that happens only with new moon. It doesn't happen every new moon, it happens once in a while, and it can be very precisely predicted. And a lunar eclipse happens when the Earth is in between the sun and the moon. So this is a lunar eclipse. No, this is a solar eclipse. So the sun is covered by the moon. And when we look at it from Earth, the sun is exactly covered. And then what we see around it is a halo of flames. And this happens only with a total solar eclipse, which are quite rare. And this is the lunar eclipse. So here the Earth is in between the moon and the sun. And one of the very great peculiarities of our solar system is that these objects completely, because of the distances, are completely covering, which is very interesting, but I won't go into that. So that is the science of it. India knew about this, about the science side of it long ago. But there's also the mythology. And the mythology talks about Rahu and Ketu. And Rahu and Ketu are part of the 9 planets, the Navagraha. But in actuality, they are not heavenly bodies. They are not physical bodies. They are the crossing points where the path of the sun and the moon crosses. And this happens every once so often. That is astronomy, can be calculated and predicted very precisely. And but to make it understandable, there is this whole mythology around them, and this mythology is told in the story of the Samudra Mantana, the churning of the milk ocean. So there was the conflict between the gods and the demons, and they had this idea, and the gods were losing all the time, so they had this idea that they should churn the milk ocean to get the Amrita, the drink of immortality. And they convinced the demons to do it together, and they would all have a share. But the gods actually plotted against the demons, because they thought if the demons get also a sip of the immortality, they become invincible, and then the gods would be invincible, but the demons also, and it wouldn't resolve the situation. So they did the churning, and a lot of treasures came from the milk ocean. And then finally, the pot with the Amrita, the Purna Kumbha with the Amrita, rose out of the milky ocean together with the god of healing. And so everybody prepared and lined up to have their sip, but the gods had plotted something. So Vishnu transformed himself into Mohini, his seductive form, and he confused the demons and only gave the Amrita, the drink of immortality, to the Devas. But then the demons got onto them. So one of them thought, okay, he did a trick, and he disguised himself as a Deva and sat in the row with the gods and waited for the spoon with a little bit Amrita. And as it entered his throat, he was discovered by the sun and moon and betrayed. And then Vishnu, in his shape of Mahavishnu, took his disc and cut off the neck of the demon. And he became the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, Rahu, who is only a head with hands, and Ketu, who is the dragon's tail. So that is how the oh, and my cursor is doing a bit funny. Okay, so that is how it is explained mythologically. The time of eclipse is considered a very dangerous time in the Indian tradition. So, for instance, people won't look at eclipses, temples will close, people won't eat during eclipses. It is also in a way seen, oh, I missed a bit. So Rahu and Ketu went after the sun and moon because they had been betrayed by them, and they swallow the dragon's head. Rahu swallows the sun and the moon every so often, and that is the eclipse. So it is explained as a dangerous time, but from the tradition I know it's also seen as a potentially very powerful time. For instance, my Dikshitar used to sit up to his neck in the temple tank in Chidambaram, in the Nataraja temple, and do jabam during the time of the eclipses. Not only him, also other Dikshitars and other people who were initiated and had that knowledge would perform this kind of special jabams during these times, because not only were they dangerous, but they were also potentially powerful. Now, this kind of iconography is a crossroads of astronomy, teaching, tradition, mythology, and ritual. And I will be able to share a little bit about it. I found much more, but I had to cut the lecture to the main points. So let's go into it. In 2009, Raja Dikshitar, in the last bit of his life, just before he died, discovered the first eclipse pavilion. And before he died, he discovered 2 more. And we also went to a very important temple. And since he passed away, I've actually found 15 eclipse pavilions and more than 25 temples where there are eclipse reliefs on the ceilings. And some of these temples are connected to eclipse mythology, to Samudra Mantana, to the Amrita. So I'll share with you some of that, and I'll stick to the main points. So they are found in standalone pavilions, and they are also found, these are some of the pavilions. You can see them, they'll stand in the landscape, and they have sometimes 4 by 6 pillars or 4 by 4 pillars. Sometimes they are partly covered, sometimes they are open. And these are some of the temples where I found eclipse reliefs on the ceilings. Like they can be on the ceiling of the Prakara, they can be in the ceiling of the Gopurams. Sometimes they are in separate mandapas within the temple complex. And this was the first eclipse pavilion which was discovered by Raja Dikshitar. We used to drive from Pondicherry to Chennai regularly via the East Coast Road, and there was this small mandapa standing just off, and I always wanted to stop. And he thought, he didn't want me to stop because it was covered by bushes and he thought it would be dangerous. And then one day it was cleaned up and we got down. And Raja realized there is this combination of a mandapa with a tirtha and a Vinayaka shrine. This is Raja Dikshitar, so he was both a traditional Dikshitar as well as a lecturer and an independent scholar. So this is that same mandapa, and here you can see the mandapa facing south here. They don't always face south, they sometimes face east, and the Vinayaka shrine, and then behind it a large tirtha. So this is the mandapa from the front, and you can see they have a flat roof, they have a porch, and they have a partly raised floor level. And sometimes they are beautifully decorated, or at least well decorated, but sometimes there's no decoration at all. So you can't even be 100% sure it's an eclipse pavilion, but many of them are well decorated. And this one is very clear, the connection to the eclipses, because these heads on the podigais, on the capitals, are all Rahu heads. This is Rahu with the fangs and the hands. This is from the tradition, this is known to be a depiction of Rahu. Here in the front, we see the donors, and we'll get back to it later. So now first, I want to go to the ceilings. The ceilings all represent heaven. That is my conclusion. So also all the mandapas that I have found seem to belong to the Vijayanagara period, the 16th and 17th century. There don't seem to be later ones and not earlier ones. And it's also not clear so far from my research whether they were erected for specific eclipses or whether they were generally connected to the phenomenon of eclipse. So the ceiling of this first eclipse pavilion on the East Coast Road, just south of Mahabalipuram, we have here the lotus medallion. We have here an Indian sphinx, the Purusha Murga. That was another subject of Raja's research, but that's not part of the story today. And Kanapa, the saint who sacrificed his eye to Shiva. And then when we turn to the right, we see here, we see here a striped animal, a feline. And I've not been able to make out whether they are meant to represent tigers or panthers, but it's chasing a small deer. And here again, we have the Naga, the serpent, chasing the disc, which is a representation, a symbol of eclipse. We have a pair of fish, and we have here a serpent, a cobra, chasing the lunar sickle, a disc with the lunar sickle.
Can't hear it.
Kathleen, can you
Yes,
mute your
got it.
microphone?
Yeah, I finally got on.
Yeah, could you mute your microphone, please? We'll talk later. So on the left-hand side of, this is the front porch of the mandapa near Mahabalipuram. We have a scorpion with a human face, a Gandhabirunda, and again a lotus medallion. I can't even show you the whole ceiling of this mandapa. There are many more interesting subjects there, but just I show you the whale. This is a whale. It's upside down here. The monkeys are right side up, and this is a correct depiction of a moray eel, which is either swallowing or spitting out, vomiting out a small animal. Then the pillars of the mandapa, they largely represent the worldly, the context. So here in front, we have donors, and there are two couples, two Indian couples and an Indian male, and there are two Dutch people depicted because 10 kilometers away was the Dutch fortification of Sadras, which was a trading post. And I have published about this elsewhere, so I won't go into it, but I think this is a 17th century Dutch person. So on the pillars here, we find Devatas, both Shiva connected and Vishnu connected. We find erotic sculptures, we find dancers, we find munis, teachers, specifically with the head on top and pointing to the sky and carrying a pot. And we find Mohini. So here is the direct reference also to the story of the Samudra Mantana, the churning of the milk ocean, where Mohini is the one who deceives the demons. And again here, Rahu and other figures which I have not been able to decode yet. Then we go back to the ceiling. So now I'm going to show you some of this imagery from the ceilings from other places. We find again the Nagas with the disc as lunar and solar eclipse depictions. Then we find fish, ceilings full of fish, makaras, that is mythological fish with elephant trunks. We find whales, we find more felines, parrots, lizards, turtles, scorpions, frogs, lotus medallions, and more Gandhabirunda, that is the double-headed eagle, and sphinxes also in other temples. But I had to focus this lecture, so I can't share that many images with you. But here we have a very clear image. This is in a gopuram, the ceiling of a gopuram. And here on the left, we have the snake with the moon. And on the right, we have the snake with the sun. And in the middle, we have a chariot. And this also is an aspect that is not yet clear to me. But that means there's still a lot to research. This is another one. This photo was given to me by Veluduran, who has been very helpful with me, helping me find, also helping me with images from temples that I had not been to. So, I mean, I found 15 standalone pavilions and 25 temples from my own collections, but there must be many more because people still, I mean, we have to learn to look up. So here we have the Naga with the sun and a small animal, a mouse or a deer. It's not clear. This is another one. And here are two Nagas with a disc. This is again a different pavilion, completely different style of work. And here we have a ceiling with fish. I could probably use a whole lecture to share ceilings with fish with you, but that will be some other time. So here we also see the simple fish, which are just, just fish in couples facing each other. And this is again either a whale-like or a macara. These are some of the fish. And I have a fantastic collection of all kinds of very strange and interesting fish. I will share one or two more with you. Like this one. So this is an amazing collection of fish and whales and macaras. I think this must be a whale. And this would be a macara because of the elephant trunk. And these are different types of fish. I'm not sure whether they are intended as biologically clear fish, although the whales are sometimes beautifully shaped. And here is a very peculiar one with almost like a parrot beak with the lunar disc. And here we see another of these felines and a macara with a huge trunk. These are some other animals. This is a turtle. Turtles are seen. I don't know, this could be a mongoose. This, to me, it looks like a beaver, but I don't think India had beavers. So I'm not sure. And so the association of these animals is from finding ceilings on which nagas are depicted with discs and then with all the other animals around. And then sometimes when I see these animals in other places, for instance, like here in the roof of a gopuram, you can conclude that this is also eclipse related. And then here again, there is this beautiful lotus medallion. So here we have lizards, we have a turtle, and we have two frogs. And this is an amazing relief on the ceiling of a mandapa that belongs with a Vishnu temple. And we have here 3 different types of Ganda Berunda, double-headed eagles. We have 2 yoginis or goddesses. We have a makara, and we have 2 animals that actually, to be honest, I wouldn't dare to identify. And here we have, again, birds that could be parrots or maybe peacocks. I could not go, I mean, a lot of these photos were photographed when I was actually traveling to, for other reasons. And I would just see it and photograph it. And this mandapa could not be entered, it was gated. So I took the photos through the gate, and this is the best I could do. But I mean, I hope to go back there because I really would like to know more about it. Also often depicted with these images are hamsas, the swans, the cosmic swans, and parrots. So what we saw on the slab, the first slab I showed you with the 2 snakes with the sun and the moon, flanked by parrots and flanked by peacocks. The parrot is an often returning theme on these ceilings. And this is actually an astronomical ceiling with the 12 signs of the zodiac, and also what I think are the nakshatras, or maybe other astronomical. I photographed many of these ceilings, and they are worth a study in itself. So now we go again to the context, the pillars, what is found on the pillars. So the eclipse, what I discovered, what I concluded from all the images that I've seen, is that eclipse plus ritual, sadhana, equaled the amrita, the immortality. And that is because, for instance, the Purna Kumbha is depicted on many of the pillars, many of the pavilions. The same teacher is represented often in this way, but also seated. So let's go to, we go back again to the story of the churning of the milk ocean with Mohini, who deceives the demons and gives the drink of immortality only to the devatas. And so this is here and this is again a depiction about the moment that Mohini gives the Amrita to the demon whose head is cut off by Vishnu with his disc, chuck, and he becomes the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, Rahu and Ketu. So here is Mohini. Mohini is often found on the reliefs of the pillars, and she is depicted with the parrot on her shoulder, and sometimes also with the pot. And I don't know, this could be a pot, I'm not sure, but I have other images that are clearer, but like I told you, I had to make choices and come to the point. And now we get back to the drink of immortality, the Amrita. This is a Google image of the Sangameshwara temple in Bhavani. And Sangameshwara means the Lord of the joining of the rivers. And actually, two physical rivers join here are the confluence. It's the confluence of the Kaveri River, the great sacred river of South India, and the Bhavani. And this is also actually a Triveni. It's a place where three rivers join together, but the third river is actually the Amudam. It's the river, the heavenly river of the Amrita, which is actually the Milky Way. So we get back to this relief, and this relief is from Bhavani, and it's probably has belonged to a ceiling of a mandapa, which was taken down, but this is still standing in the courtyard. And we see here, again, I come back to the combination, the Naga, the serpent, the cobra, approaching, chasing, about to swallow the lunar disc, and the cobra, here on the right, about to swallow the solar disc. And the moon is connected with the peacocks, and the sun is connected with the parrots. And that is important because I come now to the parrots. The parrots were one of the things that I didn't get it. Everywhere these parrots, on the ceilings, here together with Rahu, you see his fangs and his hands and his demonic face. And here are the parrots making this peculiar, very typical symbol. I mean, that's a whole story in itself. I had to throw it out. So, and here is a ritual that has been performed. So you have the Naga with the moon or the sun, it's not clear. And then there is this small yantra with the parrot sitting there. And from the slab in Bhavani, I came to the conclusion that there must be a connection to the solar eclipse. And just a few weeks ago, I found a mythology that explains the connection, because there is a story. Shiva was about to teach Parvati the secret of immortality. So he told everybody to leave the room, the space, but they forgot there was this one small parrot egg lying there, and it was about to hatch. So the parrot chick in the egg heard the whole story, a whole secret of immortality. And when it hatched, it was Sukha Maharishi. And Sukha Maharishi has the head of the parrot. And there is also a temple dedicated to him in Tamil Nadu. And so there we have the connection between parrots and immortality. And the solar, obviously, the slab from Bhavani shows there's a link to solar eclipse. Now, this is another story from the occult traditions, the yoga traditions in India. There is a story that there are two versions. The scriptures that told the secret of immortality were thrown into the sea and swallowed by a fish. And then there was the Shiva in the form of a fisherman who caught the whale or the makara and took the the scripture out. The other story is that this baby was thrown into the sea, rejected by his parents, swallowed by the fish, who took him to the bottom of the sea, where Shiva taught Parvati the secret of immortality. And he became Matsyendranath. So Matsyendranath is one of the great teachers of the yogic traditions. And there are several sampradayas that see him as their founder. And he is depicted here on the fish. And so now I got the connection between immortality and the whales and the makaras. So again, I come back here. This is again from Bhavani, and we see here the teachers. The teacher who uses the Suji Mudra to point to the heavens, and these other two teachers. And actually, the topmost yogi is female, which is quite unusual. Of course, not forbidden or anything like that, but it's not that much known. And this is another one. So the typical thing is the hairdo, the hair which is beautifully tied on top of the head. There is the piercing of the earlobes. So I've checked in with all the different sampradayas, yoga sampradayas, and I thought it could be Nath yogis because of Matsyendranath. But they pierce the top of their ears. And I thought they could be Kapalikas, the people who worship through following Shiva on the cremation ground, but I don't know. And they could be Kalamukas. But I think against that also because well, all these sects are supposed to have kind of dwindled after the 14th century, and these pavilions are very likely datable to the 16th and 17th century. And also the Kalamukas were a sect that was celibate. They were yogis that were celibate, as far as I was able to deduce from the literature. I'm not very familiar with this. It is obvious that the Eclipse pavilions were intended for ritual. This is one of them with both a platform and a niche. And there is a very strong possibility of the connection to alchemy. And why do I say that? Because I found these depictions of animals with heads sort of like entwined on the ceiling in connection with the fish, and the nagas, and the discs, and the lizards, and the whales. And there is this. Now, this is a depiction from the work of Elias Ashmole, which was published in, where I got it, sorry. I've been doing this by heart. Elias Ashmole, one of the great researchers into alchemy from the 17th century. And this particular drawing and book, what it belonged to, was published in 1652. So, or it is based on alchemy, as alchemy was understood both in the East and the West, or there were contexts, maybe, I mean, from the early 1500s, the Jesuits had been taking Indian texts to the Vatican. And of course, the British were in India in the 17th century, as were the Dutch. And I don't know, but this is, I mean, we have here the sun and the moon, and we have the dragon with the necks entwined. And this picture is about obtaining the elixir. In English, it's called the elixir or the ambrosia, which is a Greek word. And of course, in India, it was known as the amrita, the drink of immortality. And there is another aspect to this, because from the imagery on the pillars and the roofs of the Eclipse pavilions, it is obvious it was a tantric sect who performed their rituals here. And this one is very obvious, very direct. And I don't think there have been any images published or found anywhere in India where the tantric aspects of a sampradaya were this much directly represented. So we find this connection between the concept of yoga and immortality and eclipses connected also to a tantric teaching, a yogic and tantric teaching. And the purpose of it all was to obtain the amrita, to attain the amrita, the drink of immortality. And here we see the pot of the amrita, the purna kumbha, being carried on the back of the elephant, which of course was an honor. This shows sort of how important it was. And this, with my thanks again to Veludaran, who published this beautiful image of a ceiling of an eclipse pavilion that I had not been able to photograph because it was locked at the time of my visit. But here we see the lotus medallion with 4 parrots and the purna kumbha, the pot with the amrita, with the drink of immortality, being flanked by the swans, the cosmic swans, who can be a representation of the cosmic soul or the individual soul who aspires to realization. And here we have the animals with entwined necks, which are so very obviously very close to this, also this English concept of alchemy. So thank you for your attention. If anybody has any questions after our session, I can be reached in this email address. And I have published some aspects from my research already on my website. And I will be doing that also in future. So after this, the next thing will be an article. And I have so much material, it will probably have to become a book, but I don't know when I'll have the energy to write it. So thank you so very much.